Thank you so much, Ms. Miller, for having me and everyone who organized this morning. Hope everyone is doing well this morning. My name is Stanton Charlton, as Ms. Miller said. I was a student at the Salvation Army Aaron Gilmore School for the Blind. As a child, that was the first school I went to. When I was born, I was diagnosed with Leber's congenital Amorousis, which means that my vision is very low, but I can see, I do have vision. And one thing I want everyone who's listening to know from the get-go, and this is going to be the main message that I have for you this morning, is that whatever you want to do, you can do it. And I hope that the stories that I tell today are a good example of how true that is. When I was growing up, I was lucky to have a family that was always in my corner and always supported me. When they first heard of my condition, they always believed that, no matter what it was, I was going to find a way to overcome the challenges that I experienced. So when I first started at the Salvation Army School for the Blind, I always felt like this is not where I wanted to stay, because I felt like I could do more. I felt like I could function in an ordinary school setting. And this was something that I was determined to do. So I spent maybe a year or so at the Salvation Army School for the Blind before I matriculated to my first school, which was Queens College. And at first, there was some challenges. There was some challenges in terms of, I felt like the teachers did not know how to best assist me. My parents were still learning how to best assist me. And I felt like there were a lot of people at the school that kind of wrote me off. And what I mean by that is they thought, okay, he's going here, but we don't expect much from him. We don't expect him to do as well as the other students because he can't see very well. And despite that, I learned first how to read, how to write. It took me a little bit longer, and I had to be more creative in terms of how I did that. I noticed that when they were trying to teach me cursive writing, I really struggled with that, and they stopped. They stopped trying to teach me how to do it. And by the time I got to elementary school, my parents decided that I should have an aide who would assist me at school to make sure that I got the support I needed. So when I was starting first grade, I had my first aide, and I felt like at first that was fine, because at this stage, I was still trying to figure out and build confidence in myself, build confidence in terms of how I would advocate for myself. I leaned a lot on my parents to do that. I still felt like I was a little bit out of place, and I really was curious about, in terms of making friends and socializing, how I was being seen. Like, I felt like people were looking at me differently because I couldn't see very well. When I was in elementary school, people frequently would say, "Oh, you're blind," or "Oh, you can't see." Like, they would ask about it, and I felt like at that age, it really forced me to better understand that I can see, I can function like any other person. And so I would explain to them, yes, I can see, yes, I can read, I can write, and so on. So after a while of having an aide, I started to feel like I did not need one. I felt like I could function independently. I felt like having an aide was actually getting in the way of me developing relationships with teachers. relationships with students. I felt like that was a crush that I did not want to depend on. And so I told my parents, probably by about third grade, after having a few A's, that listen, I want to do this myself. I don't need an aid anymore. I want to function independently. And so they were all for it. They supported me. And it was now on me to be the one advocating for myself and speaking to the teachers and letting them know, okay, this is what I need. And so I worried that the students would feel like, and even the teachers too would feel like, now, since I'm requesting additional support, I'm getting special treatment, like, for example, in terms of accommodations, I had to make sure that I was sitting near the front of the room, or I needed to have my notes enlarged so that I could read them. And ordinarily, these are things that if I wasn't blind, I wouldn't have to ask for these things, but I'm just asking for these things to feel like I can compete with anyone else. And so I noticed that I started to do better at advocating for myself and feeling more comfortable. And so as I grew and started to figure out how to function with my low vision, I noticed that people started to gravitate towards me more because they realized that I was not letting my eyesight get in the way of who I was as a person. I was excelling in school. I was near the top of my class throughout my elementary school at this point, even though I know that the teachers weren't necessarily pushing me as hard as they could have because of my eyesight. I recognize that, because I know that everyone who has a disability in the Bahamas understands that the Bahamas was not created with them in mind. Like, people with disabilities like us, people who are blind or have low vision, they're often afterthoughts when it comes to being successful in the Bahamas. And I always wanted to push against that. My parents were always saying, no matter what it is, you can do it. And I felt like I was always determined to push against that. When I was in school, I was participating in PE. I was in sports. I would try anything. I was doing karate outside of school. I was taking swimming lessons. I was traveling. I was doing all of these things that I know people who would first look at me and say, oh, he can't see, or how is he doing these things? They would not understand how I was doing these things. And I think that I know that I always had this, put this pressure on myself, I think, to push back against that. When I was going into high school, I really started to figure out what my skills were. I knew that I understood now that I love to write, which is interesting because when I was younger, comprehension was one of my weakest subjects. I could not do well in English at all. I wasn't doing very well. But as high school went on, I started to realize I love to write, I love to talk, and my parents pushed me to join Kingsway Academy, was where the high school I went to, the Kingsway Academy debate team. And when they told me, I actually wasn't sure I wanted to join. I was nervous, and I think maybe I was putting pressure on myself, and I was nervous about it because I was not sure how well I would do because of my eyesight, which is kind of ironic because I've been telling you how determined I was, but I'm not going to lie and say I felt like that every day. There were times where I got down on myself. I worried that my eyesight was holding me back, and I had to push back on that. I had to say, look, I can do anything as long as I put my mind to it, as long as I pray about it, as long as I have my family support, I can do it. And so I joined the debate team. And that was probably one of the best decisions I had made as a high school student. I was competing. I love to compete. I was competing. I was in a team setting, and I grew up really loving to watch sports. But because of my eyesight, I didn't feel like I could play sports competitively. So that was my outlet. So I was on the debate team, and it was actually because I was on the debate team that I had an opportunity to join the National Youth Parliament in 11th grade. One of the judges at one of the debates specifically requested for me to join that session of the National Youth Parliament, which meant that me, who people didn't really even think, okay, that I could function in a regular school setting, me who people weren't really believing in or pushing or thinking that I could be at the top of my class, me who people weren't sure how well I could see and didn't really believe in me, that meant that I was going to be on television, on national television, on ZNS. And that does not mean that there weren't still setbacks. When I was giving my speech on television, one strategy that I learned in debate was I practiced my speeches as much as I could ahead of time. So I tried to memorize them because I know that when I'm reading the speeches, I can't see every word on the paper. If I looked at every word on the paper, I would never finish the speech. So I started to figure out ways around that. So I memorized the speeches as long as I could. And when I was giving the speech in the House of Assembly, the pages started to stick together, and I couldn't change them. So one of the aides in the Parliament came trying to help me, and I was able to continue to go on because I memorized the speech, and I caught my composure, and I continued to do it. And I think that is really a metaphor for the way my life has gone to this point. I've been knocked down, like I'm sure every one of you has, but I didn't give up. I pushed forward. I did not let the challenges that I experienced define my destination. And so I was able to give that speech in youth parliament. I graduated high school, fourth in my class, fourth out of 50 people. And I decided, I always knew that I wanted to go off to the United States for university. And I went as far as I possibly could go, despite my parents' best advice. I went all the way to St. John's University in Minnesota. And if anybody knows where Minnesota is, that's pretty much near the North Pole. That's near Canada. That's one of the coldest places you could go. I knew I wanted to see snow, and I studied communication and computer science there. And I really noticed still that people at first, I know I experienced this in the Bahamas, but people in the United States, people in the United States continue to treat me a little differently at first. Not just in this case because of my eyesight, but because I was from the Bahamas and because I was Black. And these are new challenges that I had to encounter in a new country, far away from home. And I knew that I wanted to figure out not only how to navigate these challenges, but to figure out how to make it easier for other people to understand what I'm going through. So I went back to, what am I good at? Writing. And so I decided to write to the college newspaper. And the very first article that I wrote to them was explaining how I felt like I was being treated differently because of my eyesight. I talked about an experience I had almost every day. I would go to the main dining hall at the university. I would get assistance in getting my food, and I would sit down at the cafeteria table, and nobody would sit next to me ever. Would never happen unless I came with one person. That's it. Like nobody would. They would always avoid my table, and I always wondered why that was. So, I really tried to explain why is that, and I wanted to figure out um, that how to navigate that, and also let other people know that what you're experiencing is completely normal. And I wanted to, as a student, help other people who have disabilities figure out a better way forward and to feel more supported. I worked for the campus writing center, and one of the projects that I did was I wanted to make sure that my coworkers were better trained to assist students who have disabilities, whether it be blindness, people who were hearing impaired, people with learning disabilities, or people who didn't speak English as their first language. So I worked with accessibility services, and accessibility services is actually something that I had some reservations about. I was nervous about even using accessibility services when I was a student in college. I was still giving myself a hard time, I guess, about feeling like I was getting special treatment without worrying that other people felt like I was getting special treatment. And these are things that I had to work on. What you're experiencing right now, probably, if you're not sure about how you're going to figure out how to be successful as a blind person or a person with low vision, my point is that there are challenges that you will experience every day, but the biggest challenges that you'll experience are in your own head. They're mental. If you feel like or continue to tell yourself that you can't succeed, then it's going to be difficult. And I had to get away from that. I still struggle with that sometimes. I still put pressure on myself, and I need to, there's something that I continue to work on. When I was finishing college and starting to find employment, I know that it would be difficult, but I realized that it would also be more difficult because, again, going back to when I was a student, people did not believe in me as easily because of my eyesight. I remember when I was applying for a summer job as a student, it was a simple job that me and a friend of mine were applying for. It was just packing books in the library. They were doing some renovations to the library. So all you had to do was take the books off the shelves, put them in boxes, box them up, and that was all. So I felt that this was something that I could do. So I applied for the job, and I noticed that I knew a few people who were also applying for the same job that got it, a few friends of mine. And the person who was hiring for this job responded to me and said, "Hey, we want you to come in to the library and we want you to prove that you can do this job. We want you to do some practice packing for us." And I knew right away that I was being treated differently because of my low vision. And so I reached out to accessibility services and told them what was going on. And they said the same thing. They told me that I was being discriminated against. I told the library that I would not come in to prove to them that I could do this job because I believed that I could do this job. I was hired for the job and I did very well. And this is something that anyone with low vision and anyone who is blind has to experience every day. People not believing that they can do a job, or people not believing that they can be successful just because they see differently. And that's not right. And that's something that I am determined to push back on. And I'm determined to work and succeed in this life. And that's something that I encourage everyone else to do. I've written for several companies in the Bahamas. I've had my writing published in the United States. I've had my writing published in the United Kingdom. I went to study abroad in the United Kingdom for a semester, which is something that I also wanted to do because I knew it would be a challenge, and I knew I wanted to see how well I could do it. And I was nervous about how it would go. I was nervous about getting around, and I was nervous about, it was a different kind of independence again. And I remember I got an internship while I was in London. And the internship was about an hour commute from where I was living at the time. So I had to figure out how to use the train, the underground train station called the Tube. They have great support over there. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to use the support services that they have. And so I did a few practice runs with them to get more comfortable with the route. And I was doing it. I was going to work by myself with no assistance. It was about a 15-minute walk from the apartment that I was living in, to the train station. I memorized the route. I walked there by myself, and I figured out how to make sure I was using the correct train. There's a magnifier app on my phone that I use to look. They not only have the name of the destination on the train, they also say it aloud, which is just something that I think would be really helpful. And that made a big difference for me. So I was able to commute independently with no assistance. And I think the biggest part of why I was able to do that was because I was determined to do it. I was determined, despite how challenging and how afraid I was, to do that. Before, a couple of months earlier, when I had first gone to London, I was still trying to figure out how to get from my classes to my apartment, which was about a 10-minute walk. And I remember getting lost one day. I got lost one day going back home, and I was terrified. I had to figure out, okay, how am I going to get back? And this was probably what I was most afraid of, getting lost and not knowing how to get back. I remember wandering around for maybe an hour, and I figured out, okay, I'm gonna call a cab. Okay, because I gotta find a way back. But even though I'm gonna find a way back using the cab, I was determined even more so to figure out that route. And so I did. And if I hadn't figured out that route, I wouldn't have built the confidence and comfort that I needed to be able to travel to work, to take that hour journey back and forth by myself. And so just to wrap up, I just want to say that no matter how nervous or how you feel like you're not sure how you can do whatever challenges you're facing, whether that be working or studying or just finding friends, finding people that understand that you are more than a person with a disability, you can do it. I did it. I'm still doing it despite the challenges, and I'm not going to give up now. And I'll take any questions anyone has, but thank you for giving me the opportunity to share my experiences this morning.
Amen.
Hi, thank you so much, Mr. Charlton. I don't know if any students have any questions at this time. Well, you can always get your questions to me, and I'm in contact with Mr. Charlton, so I'll make sure you get your answers.
I have a question, Ms. Miller.
Okay.
Very good job, Mr. Charlton and Mrs. Beckford, the principal. I appreciate everything that you've said. Just wanted to find out, I don't know if I missed it, but when you were at the School for the Blind, was there anything in particular that you were taught or that you learned during that time?
When I was at the School for the Blind, I was very young. I was 3 or 4 or 5 years old. And I think one of the first things that I learned was really trying to explain or understand how much vision I had. This was kind of something that I was still working through at that age. I knew that I could see and that I could see in color. My parents for a long time weren't sure how much color I could see. So that was something that I was figuring out. And I think that that's something that the School for the Blind helped me to better understand for myself.
All right, thank you.
No problem.
Or anyone else? Any students, any teachers, anyone else?
Good morning. Hi, Stanton. This is Desiree Arena. I'm
Morning.
Jordan Wilkinson's aunt.
Yes, ma'am.
You and Jordan went to Queens College together.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I just want to tell you, thank you for sharing your story and encourage you in your life journey to continue to strive for your independence and to motivate others of disability status to also claim their independence and be courageous as you have demonstrated that you have been. We all have to be courageous when we're embarking on new ventures, but I'm sure your challenges were probably of a greater magnitude. So kudos to you, and I wish you further success as you travel through life. God bless you always.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Daniel's sister. I would like to ask if you had any challenges when you were younger, because Daniel is 10 years old. If you had any challenges doing like completing basic skills, like going to the bathroom on your own, brushing your teeth, things like that.
I think one of the biggest challenges I had was actually learning how to tie my shoes. It took me so long to figure out how to do it, and no matter how many times people explained to me, okay, you take the bunny ears and do this, I could not get it. The shoes kept going loose, and it took me a while to figure out, okay, I actually started to double tie them. I did the bottom knot, I would do the bunny ears, and then I do the bunny ears again. I also, shaving was another challenge, and that was something that took me a little bit of time, mainly because when I shave, it's mostly by feel. So if I go in the mirror after I shave, I can sort of see how much hair might be left or if I miss anything, but it's mostly by feel. And so it took me some time to, with the help of my father, to figure out, okay, what shaving cream works best for me, which direction to shave in, things like that. But it was especially hard at first because of not being able to see the hair, and so on.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Charlton.
Morning.
Kevin Cartwright. I'm one of those persons who would have had the opportunity to work with you when you were a very young child, and I can still, just listening to you now, can still recall those days working and introducing you to Braille, and you were such a brilliant child with a love for and a thirst for knowledge. And it's amazing how quickly the time and years go by, but I just want to congratulate you on your achievements and to encourage you to continue to move forward and to be a motivating force to others, because persons like yourself and myself who live with a disability every day, we understand the challenges and we need to be able to be that beacon of light for those coming behind us and a source of reference when they need our advice. So thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Good morning, everyone. Hi, this is Stanton's dad. Good presentation, Stanton. Now, you've had a lot of time in the US after leaving the Bahamas. What advice would you give to the students here to prepare for going outside the Bahamas? And what encouragement would you give to the students as well as the teachers here at the School for the Blind in pushing ahead for better facilities, better programs for persons with disabilities, just from where you sit?
I think that one of the fortunate things that I had was from an early age, you and mommy made sure that I had an idea of what was available to me in terms of support. And there's so much technology available in the US, in Europe, to assist students with disabilities. And I think that's so important that educators in the Bahamas explain to the students that there are these options available for you. I remember being taken to Bascom Palmer and being taken to all of these retreats in the US. And it really helped to open me up to the possibilities and to understand that if there was something that was difficult for me because of my low vision, that there was something available to support. So I think that we need to, as a community, push the local leaders, push the local educators to find ways to have students be given more access to the technologies available. But I also feel like it's important in terms of making sure that when students are given access to these technologies or given support at home, that we change the way that we look at it. I feel like there isn't enough done to educate the other students to make sure that this student is not receiving special treatment. This student is only receiving the assistance that is needed to level the playing field. And I feel like the way that we look at that needs to change. I feel like we need to push harder in terms of making sure that students realize that whatever they dream, regardless of what disability they have, should not be limited just because they were born in a country where having a disability is particularly difficult. When you look at, compared to the United States, for example, if you have low vision, from the time you enter elementary school, you're set up with an individual education plan, which means that you will be attached to a counselor and you will make sure that if there's any additional assistance that you need to function in an ordinary school setting, that you will get it. And I think that that's something that we really need to change locally, because right now, aside from the Salvation Army or Grandma School for the Blind, if you have students outside of that who want to succeed or believe that they, like I did, believe that they are able to function in an ordinary school setting, it's very difficult. It's more difficult than it should be.
Thank you so much from your sharing with us. We got so much, your determination in spite of your fear, your stories of catching the bus, getting lost, knocked down, but you said not pushed, but you still push forward in spite of being knocked down. And I especially perked up when you talk about the story of being alone. You pushed through that loneliness of sitting to the table and being by yourself and the discrimination. So many things the children can learn from you. And so we're so grateful, but I'm gonna invite, students, remember, and parents, whatever questions you have, anytime, just get them to me and I will make sure I get answers for you from Mr. Charlton, who's a wonderful example of determination and pushing forward. So now we're gonna close with a vote of thanks from Ms. Walking.
Good morning. My name is Ms. Charlene Walken, teacher's aide at the School for the Blind. Just want to say a special thank you, Mr. Charlton, for motivating us this morning. I was highly motivated, and I am sure everyone here on this platform were motivated by your achievement, by your encouraging words. I know you had days when you wanted to give up, and I want to say thank you for not giving up, because we would not have had you here this morning. And thank you to your parents and family members who were very supportive. It seems as if they were there for you. According to your words, they were there for you. Thank you so much.
Yes.
And I hope that we can have you come in and further encourage our students, because I know it's very challenging out there, you know, and things are not in place for them. And so we would like to have you come in sometimes just to motivate. I know this COVID time, but you know, protocols will follow. And please, thank you so much. I appreciate it this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much.
everyone. Mr. Stanton, we have 13 students and we have 10 listening in this morning. And so we're happy. Unfortunately, 3 of them didn't get to listen in, but I wanted you to know that we had at least 10 of them listening in. Thank you so much. You want to say something before you leave us?
I just want to say that it was an honor to speak to you, speak to every student here. It means a lot to me. I would love another opportunity to speak again, and I'm glad that I was able to touch at least one person today.
Continue to press on, Stanton.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
And
Be
to
encouraged.
God be the glory.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
Don't
Thank you so
forget
much.
you are the praying family, your grandmother and your mother and family and your father
Yes, ma'am.
and your aunts, praying family.
Yes, ma'am.
So, you know, to God be the glory, and
Amen.
just be encouraged.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so
All right,
much.
thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.